All I will say to you guys is the No Kings protests have not inspired any action. The Kimberly-Clark employee, there was a giant 5+ alarm fire at a warehouse in Queens last night. Someone living in Porterville, California was also served an eviction notice by local police and opened fire. These stories are connected. People are having their livelihoods threatened. When you become a homeless in the United States, people don't treat you like a human anymore. You are functionally discarded. Sure, every now and then someone stops and gives you some money or something, but overwhelmingly you are ignored. Heck, people might stop and tell you to get a job. Something you probably have or had really recently and just got unlucky because a company decided that you were the bottom line. People can no longer afford to live, and they're told to roll over. And they've long since understood that just voting for the blue or the red colored tie hasn't materially helped them in decades. They've exhausted nonviolent means. What's the next thing down the list? Show your displeasure. I'm not saying I endorse these things for the record, but I am saying we need to contextualize actions like these. These are desperation actions because all other avenues have been exhausted for these people. The cops ran that guy over with a Bearcat, by the way, after. Not sure what warehouse was on fire in Queens. We do know about the Kimberly-Clark one, though. Whether they know it or not, more people are waking up to the evils of capitalism. And I think it's our duty to make sure that anger is funneled to the right places. Because whether we want to admit it or not, people are inspired by things like the Kimberly-Clark employee. People will copycat that. When their voices have gone unheard for years and years, their material conditions are deteriorating, you understand why people go to that.
Deadly in California. Authorities say a man shot and killed a sheriff's deputy in an ambush attack. Our senior correspondent Claudia Cameron joins us now with the details. Claudia.
John, the situation spiraled out of control the moment officers arrived to serve that eviction notice, with one neighbor recording the gunfire. This happened yesterday morning in the small town of Porterville, about an hour south of Fresno in Tulare County. Authorities say the shooter, 59-year-old David Morales, barricaded himself inside and opened fire when officers showed up. One of those shots killed Detective Randy Hoppert, a 6-year veteran, just 35 years old. He was a husband and father with another child on the way. The shooting prompted a massive response by officers who exchanged gunfire with Morales, who refused pleas by his family to surrender. He apparently was determined not to be taken alive, but what pushed him to the brink is so far unknown. After 8 hours, authorities brought in an armored vehicle called a Bearcat to tear the house apart. Still shooting at police, Morales jumped out a window, and that's when the Bearcat went after him, running him over and killing him. At a press conference, the sheriff did not mince his words.
We intentionally ran him over.
What agency was it?
Kern County Sheriff's Office. Don't shoot at cops. You shoot at cops, we're going to run you over. He got run over. He got what he deserved.
The sheriff said Morales did not have a criminal record, but did have 18 handguns registered in his name, not, however, the high-power rifle he used during the shootout. The shocking day of violence has left the community reeling and praying for the family of Detective Hoppert, whose body was escorted in a procession to the coroner's office.
I think that Americans are finally going to have to learn what the means of production are and what surplus value is, and who owns the means of production and who receives the surplus value. Those things are going to be necessary for our American education in 2026, because things like this will be happening, and we can explain it when we understand what the means of production are and what surplus value is. Who owns it? Who gets it?
This is a good meme. Tax the rich? Nah. Seize the means of production? Yeah. As long as you allow capitalists to control production and exploit the workers for surplus value, they're going to continue to accumulate more and more capital and wealth, and then use that wealth to control the government. You could tax them to pay for good things like healthcare or other benefits for the workers. Those kind of social programs don't change what's wrong with the system at its core, which is that the means of production are owned privately by a small group of capitalists and bankers who continually exploit the rest of us for our labor to create more and more surplus value. The system is based upon the exploitation of labor by a small class of people who don't themselves labor. And they manage production, politics, and society in a way that's not always beneficial for all of us. So ultimately, we have to change the system at its core, or it'll keep doing the things that we don't like.
Good morning to the man that burnt down that warehouse. They said the paper product alone was worth $500 million. That's just one warehouse. It was 20 employees in that warehouse. Y'all got $500 million worth of product. Y'all could have paid them folks more. Now, and I think they said the building worth $120 million. So y'all out $720 million. And you gotta scrap all that. You gotta scrap that. You gotta start from the foundation. Shout out to that man.
Imagine yourself sitting in front of a potential employer discussing the job you hope you'll get from that employer. And you go through a whole lot of stuff about the job, and then you get to the dicey part. How much are you going to pay me, you ask your prospective employer. Let's assume he tells you $25 an hour. Well, Mark says, you know, even if you can't bring it into your own head to see it, to face it, to admit it, to say it to someone else, you know what that means. Every hour that you work there, your labor, added to that of all the other people, gives the employer that much more to sell. That's why he's hiring you. You either make it better or you make more of it, of whatever the company makes. And you know that if the employer takes the extra you helped to produce and sells it, he has to get more than $25 for the extra you produce per hour, because otherwise there's no point in hiring you. If all he got was $25 more per hour of your labor, and then he had to turn around and give it to you, there's nothing in it for him. He's not going to do it. In other words, here we go. You have to produce for an employer a surplus. You have to do more in the way of creating value for your employer than he gives you in the wages he pays you. In other words, here it comes, folks, he rips you off. Not because he's a not nice guy, and not because he's greedy, which he may or may not be. It's because it's how the system works. If he doesn't make a profit out of you, he doesn't hire you. You know why? Because he uses that profit in part to struggle competitively with all the other capitalists who are doing to their workers pretty much the same. And they struggle as to how much they can get out of their workers. How much of the rising productivity of the workers can the employer snatch to win his battle with other employers that are doing the same thing? You would understand much more about the society if you saw that as the conflict that shakes it. And the conflict is everywhere. That's why at every job, whether you see it and face it or not, the employer is always looking for ways to pay you less, to move the job overseas where you can pay a worker less, to replace you with a machine if that costs him less, to bring in a cheap worker, a female, an immigrant, a child. Child labor was the way it was done for centuries. It's awful, the endless struggle. It's also terribly inefficient. We've organized the production of goods and services with a core of a conflict, a horrible conflict that leads to sabotage, to lockouts, to strikes, to discriminations of every kind. We've created an absurd system founded on a conflict-ridden economic foundation.